This week on Jerusalem Dateline, ISIS nears defeat as President Trump says 100% he'll leave U.S. troops in northeast Syria. What will this mean for the people in that region? Plus, Israel's Gaza border heats up, and Israel's prime minister shows the world how a wall can work. And OurCrowd brings together innovators and investors to change the world. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. ISIS could only be days away from defeat, and inside northeast Syria, the best allies of the U.S. in the fight against the Islamic State say they're fighting for their freedom and for those who lost their lives in the battle against radical Islam. That's a sound of victory as one of the final ISIS weapons depots goes up in flames. One more sign the end of the Islamic State Caliphate is near. While the U.S. provides air support, this prolonged fight has also required boots on the ground. In 2015, the city of Kobani was the epicenter in the battle against the Islamic State. Nearly 4 years later, you can still see much of the destruction. It was also the beginning of the U.S.-led coalition to defeat ISIS. Those fighting alongside U.S. troops are a team of Kurds, Arabs, Christians, and others called the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF.
This alliance managed to repel ISIS attacks from Kobani and from Tel Aviv and other areas. And later, after the formation of the SDF, we managed to defeat ISIS terrorism from all north and east Syria.
As the front line shifted to the south, these men and women paid a high price as they took back territory from the Islamic State.
The Syrian people gave a lot of sacrifices. I think we have more than 9,000 or 10,000 martyrs who sacrificed their lives during the fight to defeat terrorism in the area.
Aram suffered great personal loss.
Personally, I know all of these friends. I lose them on the field. We were fighting together against ISIS, and we lose them in real sad occasions. We find that they are really our motivation to stand up every morning and fight again and win this war.
They fought side by side and now are buried side by side. Even Christians and Muslims. Reem Mardau takes care of this cemetery.
They sacrifice themselves and give their souls to keep us in safety and at peace. And at least we can just take care of this cemetery for them. This is our duty.
The living now fight for a new way of life here, where everyone is equal.
It's the first time that we feel we can take our decision by our minds. It's the first time that we live in justice together. No one is better than me, I am no better from anyone here.
With more insight on this critical region, here's CBN News senior international correspondent Gary Lane.
Joining us with insights from his recent trip to the Syrian front lines is CBN News contributing correspondent Chuck Holton. Chuck, President Trump now says 100% he's going to keep troops in Syria, U.S. troops there. What does that mean?
Well, I think that means that we are supporting the Kurds, the Syrian Democratic Forces, which are primarily made up of the Kurds, in giving them space to establish a safe area for them in eastern Syria. So the Kurds right now control everything to the east of the Euphrates River for the most part. And they have been looking for that. One of the reasons they've been fighting so hard against ISIS, they've been so committed in this fight, is because they see this as their opportunity to establish, if not their own country, at least a safe haven for the Kurds. And so they're very dedicated to that. And leaving U.S. troops there is going to be a calming influence in the region, because you've got a lot of players there that are at odds with each other. You've got the Russians, you've got the Iranians, you've got Hezbollah, a very large presence on the eastern side of the Euphrates. You've got, of course, the Syrian Democratic Forces. You've got the United States, and you've got Turkey. Now, if the U.S. leaves, Turkey, Bashar al-Assad's forces, the Russians, the IGRC, they all go back against the SDF, the Kurds. And that's bad for stability in the region, without a doubt. One of the things I think that President Trump got wrong is that he was on a phone call with Erdogan, who is ostensibly our ally, but he's not an ally, everybody says Erdogan is ISIS. Erdogan has supported ISIS in the past. He's definitely straight up Muslim Brotherhood.
He allowed them to go back and forth over the border there.
Yes, right. And they have found, the SDF forces are telling us, they have found stacks of Turkish passports in ISIS safe houses that they've taken over. So Turkey is not our friend in this battle.
No, he wanted to use ISIS to get at Assad, right?
That's right.
Overthrow Assad.
Right. And so the U.S. staying there means that it's a diluting influence on all those power struggles, and it'll keep the fire down enough to let hopefully the Syrian Democratic Forces create a safe haven.
So what did they tell you about it? Were they very worried that the U.S. was going to abandon them, their friends?
Absolutely. Yes, they were absolutely. And one of the things that I heard over and over again from the Kurds is they have a saying about Americans. They say the Americans will always do the right thing once they've expended all other options. And I think that we've proven them right on that, unfortunately.
Now, you were on the front lines. Is the caliphate done now? ISIS through?
To say the caliphate, I mean, yes, ISIS was, they created a government in Syria and northern Iraq. Their caliphate was a country. They minted their own currency. I've got here an ISIS coin that they minted, and they had legal tender in there for buying and selling. That has now fallen. That country is no more. And to say ISIS is gone is another question entirely, because the idea that is ISIS is not dead. And it's spread out across the globe to 30 or 40 different countries. They're saying now that, Yemen, Nigeria, places in Africa are going to be the new hot spots for ISIS.
Well, what people don't realize is the origins of ISIS was in Iraq. It was Al-Qaeda, Iraq.
That's right.
Originally.
Yes.
So this is really like we're dealing with Al-Qaeda.
Right. And the people who, we've talked about this before, that in that area, the culture of that area, especially Muslim culture, follows a strong horse. So when ISIS was the strong horse, people signed up in droves. And that's one of the reasons they were able to take over so much area with so little time and so little resources, was because it was all Sunni area. ISIS is a Sunni organization. And they came in and said, we're the new leaders in town. And everybody said, great, sounds good to me. Now that they've been bombed into oblivion, people are going, hey, maybe the Turks are better to,
Well, do you see another ISIS or some other group like ISIS coming to power?
I think what you're going to see is there will be something under a new name that comes along that will be the new face of the global Islamic jihadist movement, and especially the Sunni Islamic jihadist movement, that then will become the new enemy we have to fight. This fight is not over. The battle against ISIS might be over, but the greater war is not.
The House of Representatives passed a resolution condemning racism and bigotry. It was an attempt by Democrats to evade charges of anti-Semitism triggered by freshman Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's controversial remarks about Jews in Israel. Younger Democrats praised the resolution for condemning all forms of bigotry in America. But critics say it fell desperately short of addressing the growing problem of blatant anti-Semitism within the Democratic Party.
What began as a House resolution condemning anti-Semitism morphed into a 7-page document condemning anti-Muslim bigotry, along with a whole host of other bad behaviors. It all started when freshman Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, one of 2 Muslim members of the House, suggested lawmakers who support Israel are pledging allegiance to a foreign country, something many lawmakers found deeply offensive.
We are having this debate because of the language of one of our colleagues, language that suggests that Jews like me, who serve in the United States in Congress, and whose father earned a Purple Heart fighting the Nazis in the Battle of the Bulge, that we are not loyal Americans? Why are we unable to singularly condemn anti-Semitism?
A question asked passionately by members on both sides of the aisle.
We came here because of an anti-Semitic remark And we came here to condemn anti-Semitism, but this resolution, as changed up over the last hour, now condemns just about everything.
Along with anti-Muslim rhetoric, the resolution condemns past white extremist attacks on African Americans, bigotry against Latinos, Native Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, other people of color, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, the LGBTQ community, and immigrants.
We left out the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We left out Wiccans. We left out Jehovah's Witnesses. We left out disabled people who are often discriminated and had hateful things about.
And some members were outraged Congresswoman Omar wasn't called out in the resolution. Speaker Pelosi pushed to keep her out of it.
There's one resolution addressing these forms of hatred, not mentioning her name because it's not about her. It's about these forms of hatred.
The debate comes as American support for Israel is falling. When asked about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a new Gallup poll finds 59% of Americans say they're more sympathetic towards Israel. That's down from 64% just last year. The divide among Democrats over support for Israel may have political implications heading into 2020 as the party works to win back more moderate Democrats. President Trump won in 2016. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, Israel's border fence. Could it be a model for the U.S.? When we come back. For weeks, Hamas has heated up the Israeli-Gaza border by sending explosive devices across that border by balloon. It's been nearly a year since Hamas launched its so-called March of Return along that border with sometimes daily violent protests. Israel Defense Forces aircraft have been striking Hamas targets inside Gaza for more than a week in response to those balloons and other explosive devices. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel would provide a response to the increased violence.
I'm aware that in recent days there has been some renewal of Hamas aggression in all sorts of ways. Hamas should understand that any display of aggression will be met with a very vigorous response on Israel's part. They would do well to understand this now rather than later.
Netanyahu was speaking after a tour and briefing at Israel's border fence further south along the Israel-Egypt border.
This fence has been a phenomenal success. It has completely stopped the entry of hundreds of thousands of people from Africa and the entry into Israel of terrorists from Sinai.
As President Trump and Congress battle over a border wall, they could possibly learn from Israel that's been through the same exercise. Israelis had their own national debate about border security, and they found a solution. During a sometimes heated Oval Office meeting with congressional Democrats over U.S. border security, President Trump pointed to Israel as an example to consider.
If you really want to find out how effective a wall is, just ask Israel. 99.9% effective. And our wall will be every bit as good as that, if not better.
8 years ago, Israel faced its own border security crisis when thousands of Africans from nations like Sudan, Ethiopia, and Eritrea came across its southern border. By 2012, 55,000 illegal immigrants flooded into Israel.
They came into Israel illegally. They caused major problems in southern Tel Aviv, which was already a little bit run down, but the rape rate and the murder rates skyrocketed from those 55,000 illegal immigrants.
David Rubin, author of Trump and the Jews, remembers the debate Israelis went through.
There were protests in Israel. There were a lot of people from southern Tel Aviv, those neighborhoods, the residents who were protesting.
Israel's solution? Build a high-tech fence along its southern border. It eventually cost nearly $500 million, one of the most expensive projects in Israel's history. The fence runs more than 150 miles, stretching from the Gaza Strip to the Israeli town of Eilat on the Red Sea.
The wall was finished in 2015. In 2016, there were 11 illegal immigrants to Israel from that southern border. In 2017, there were 0 illegal immigrants to Israel from that southern border. So I think the evidence is clear. the wall works.
In addition to stopping the flow of illegal immigrants, the fence has helped with many other key needs.
No doubt, if that wall and that fence didn't exist, there would be many more terrorist attacks, and the free movement of those terrorists that are coming in from Egypt or from Sinai into Israel, we've now stopped that from taking place.
Israel only had to build a 150-mile wall, while the U.S. faces a 2,000-mile border with Mexico. Even so, how could this possibly help with the current debate in the U.S. about a border wall?
We're very happy to have the high technology and the creativity and the entrepreneurship that we do in Israel, and we're very happy for our friends in America to learn from us.
However Congress and the White House reconcile their differences about border security, Israel can point to one wall that works. Up next, how one group is bringing together investors and innovators, changing the world. We've often told you about Israel's groundbreaking technology and how it's been described as the startup nation. Much of that technology was together in one place, and this week we'll look how it's changing the world. Nearly 20,000 innovators and investors from almost every country came to see or signed up online for the largest tech meeting in the history of Israel, the OurCrowd Global Investor Summit. The summit brings together extraordinary technologies like Beyond Meat that developed a plant-based meat substitute and many more. Very good. They make water out of air.
We think that we found the solution for the entire world, for the new source of drinking water.
They plan to connect the world through microsatellites.
There are 4 billion people in the world that are not connected. They need to be able to choose whether to connect, to be connected.
And they help the paralyzed get on their feet.
It's very innovative. It's perfect. It's so stable. And when I walked down the aisle with it, it was a dream come true.
OurCrowd showcased all these technologies. John Medved is the CEO and founder.
OurCrowd is the world's largest investment platform for investors to invest in startups online and in person at events like this OurCrowd Summit.
At the summit, investors meet innovators. OurCrowd democratizes capital by giving smaller investors an opportunity to invest in cutting-edge innovations, just like the large venture capitalists. After 6 years, OurCrowd is celebrating $1 billion raised for 170 companies. But the bottom line is changing the world. They call it the double bottom line, making money and doing good.
What's most exciting about today's event is that we're focused on impact, on how startups can tackle global challenges, how we can look right in the eye these issues of climate change and pollution, hunger, healthcare, transportation, energy, and how can startups really bring to humanity a huge impact for the better.
Medved explains it as an expression of tikkun olam, the Jewish concept of healing the world. Betty Wu Adams believes Christians can play a role.
God is our first entrepreneur. He created this world out of nothing for the first 6 days. I believe there's a calling for us as Christians to partner with OurCrowd as we invest in companies that's going to transform and change the world.
Adam sees this as a way to bless Israel.
Read your Bible. What does God say in Genesis to Father Abraham? This is the apple of his eyes. The Jews are his chosen people. This land is written in the Bible. And being a Gentile, I see prophecy being fulfilled every day when I'm involved investing with OurCrowd.
You know, there is a sentence in the Torah that says that Mitzion, from Jerusalem, will come Torah. And this is the situation.
Medved sees the summit through the lens of the Bible.
It's a little bit biblical today because the nations are flocking to Israel to see what we can do to help tackle global challenges and how they can bring back those lessons to their own countries.
Still ahead, a Christian family flees ISIS in Iraq and finds help from Christians in Jordan. When an Iraqi Christian family of 9 fled ISIS, they found refuge in Jordan. But they were cold and hungry until Operation Blessing stepped in to help.
Sandra and her brothers and sisters have struggled to survive as Christian refugees ever since their family was brutally attacked by ISIS.
Masked men with guns broke in the door of our home in Mosul. They beat me over the head, then they handcuffed me and threw me into a hole in the ground. They locked me in to die.
They told me they were going to kill my husband as they dragged him away. I thought I lost everything, so I just sat on the floor and cried.
Wissam was held captive in the hole for 3 days with no food or water. Then, American and Iraqi forces rescued him, and he was reunited with his family. They made their way to Amman, Jordan.
I have nothing. The government won't let us have regular jobs, and I spent everything I had to get us away from ISIS.
We can only feed our children 1 meal a day, and they can't go to school because we don't have money to register them. It's unbearable seeing them go without. But I have faith in Jesus. That's something ISIS could not take away from me.
After Operation Blessing learned about their problems, we took Wissam grocery shopping for meat, rice, and fresh fruits and vegetables. We also got the family powdered milk, diapers, and other things for the baby.
My refrigerator was completely empty, and we didn't know how we would get food. Now my children have good things to eat.
We also found out the whole family was freezing in their bare floor apartment during the winter. So we bought them carpet and a gas heater they can also use for cooking. And we got the kids new winter clothes.
Before we were super cold, and now it's much better.
Sandra and her brothers and sisters were enrolled free of charge at our Operation Blessing-funded Christian school.
I love the school so much. My favorite part is learning about Jesus and how to be a good Christian.
My husband and I are so proud of them. We are all very grateful for this opportunity.
Wissam helps out around the school, and in return, we help him with his expenses. With the support of Operation Blessing, Sandra's family is doing much better than before, and their hope has been restored.
My children now have a chance for a good future, and you have helped me forget the problems of the past. I pray you will be blessed by God.
Jesus sent you to us, and I'm very thankful. I'm so happy to have you in our lives.
Thank you for all the help you've given my family. It makes my heart feel glad knowing that you think about us.
Please pray for many of these families like Sandra's, whose lives were changed forever by ISIS. And if you'd like to help, you can go to cbn.com. Well, that's all for this edition. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.